Her face is an icon of ancient beauty, yet Queen Nefertiti vanished from history in an instant. One of Egypt's most powerful women simply disappeared, leaving behind a mystery that has baffled experts for centuries. We are about to unravel the clues behind her fate, from a radical religious revolution to a potential murder hidden in a royal tomb. By the end, you will understand the compelling evidence for each theory and decide for yourself what truly happened. Was she the victim of a political plot, or did she pull off history's greatest disappearing act? What does it take for a queen to be erased so completely? The origins of the queen herself are a puzzle with missing pieces. We do not know for certain where Nefertiti came from. One prevailing theory suggests she was not Egyptian at all, but a princess from the kingdom of Mitanni, sent to forge a diplomatic alliance through marriage. Another possibility paints her as a high-born Egyptian, perhaps even a close relative of her future husband, the pharaoh Amenhotep IV. This foundational mystery means we cannot fully understand her motivations without first knowing her roots. What is undeniable is the moment she stepped onto history's stage. She married the young pharaoh, and together they would shatter centuries of tradition. Early in his reign, Amenhotep IV unleashed a religious earthquake upon Egypt. He abandoned the old gods, the entire pantheon led by Amun-Ra, and declared that only one deity would be worshipped, the sun disk known as the Aten. To cement this revolution, he changed his name to Akhenaten, meaning effective for the Aten, and built a brand new capital city from nothing, a place called Akhenaten, the horizon of the Aten. In this radical new world, Nefertiti was far more than just a royal consort. She was his essential partner. Art from their early reign shows her in scenes of power never before granted to an Egyptian queen. She is depicted smiting foreign enemies, a role reserved exclusively for pharaohs. She stands equal in height to Akhenaten as they drive their chariot together, bathed in the rays of the Aten. Inscriptions do not call her merely the great royal wife. They grant her titles like Mistress of Upper and Lower Egypt, a clear indication of shared authority. Her face was everywhere, her elegant, sharp-featured profile becoming the symbol of the new order. This was a calculated presentation of a divine duo, two halves of a single ruling power. How did a woman achieve such unparalleled status in a society dominated by male pharaohs? Her prominence suggests a formidable intellect and a political will that matched her husband's own revolutionary zeal. She was not standing in his shadow, she was standing shoulder to shoulder with him, bathed in the same revolutionary light. This new capital was a stark declaration of a new world. Akhenaten, the horizon of the Aten, rose from the empty desert cliffs along the Nile, a city built from scratch in just a few years. Its boundaries were marked by massive stone tablets declaring that this land belonged solely to the sun disk, a place untouched by the old gods and their powerful priests. Life here was a grand, state-sponsored experiment. The sun-drenched city was designed to be open, with sprawling palaces and temples that had no roofs, allowing the rays of the Aten to bathe every ritual and every citizen. This was a complete break from the dark, enclosed sanctuaries of the traditional god Amun. In this revolutionary atmosphere, art itself was transformed. The rigid, formal style of centuries was shattered. Artists began to depict the royal family with a startling, almost awkward realism. They showed Akhenaten with a long face, a heavy jaw, and a strangely feminine body. Nefertiti was carved with an elegant, elongated neck, a sharp nose, and high cheekbones. Most remarkably, the art showed them not as distant, godlike figures, but as a real family. We see them playing with their daughters, embracing, and sharing intimate moments under the benevolent rays of the Aten. Nefertiti was the constant star in this new artistic vision. Her image was everywhere, more visible and powerful than any queen before her. She was not just depicted at her husband's side. She was shown performing rituals once reserved for the pharaoh alone, offering directly to the Aten. This city was her stage, and she was its co-ruler and its chief priestess. Her very presence was woven into the fabric of this radical new society. To understand why she vanished, you must first grasp the profound isolation of this world she helped create. They had turned their backs on 1,000 years of tradition, and in doing so, they made powerful enemies. The entire city of Akhenaten was a beautiful, fragile bubble, and when the bubble burst, everything and everyone inside it was at risk. The pinnacle of Nefertiti's authority is captured in a single, startling image. On the limestone blocks of a temple in Karnak, we see the queen not just standing beside her husband, but actively performing the ultimate act of royal power. She is shown in the classic pharaonic pose, raising a mace to smite a bound captive. This was not symbolic decoration. In the rigid visual language of ancient Egypt, this act was the exclusive, divine right of the king. It was the pharaoh's duty to subdue the forces of chaos and protect the land. For Nefertiti to be depicted in this role was a radical, almost unbelievable, statement. It declared to every person who saw it that she possessed the same martial and divine authority as Akhenaten himself. This was not a one-time occurrence. Across the city of Akhenaten, her image is carved performing other sacred duties reserved for the king. She is shown officiating in temple rituals, making offerings directly to the Aten, and receiving the blessings of the sun disk alone. Her titles evolved beyond Great Royal Wife to include designations like Mistress of All Women and Lady of the Two Lands, phrases that echo the traditional titles of a ruling pharaoh. The most compelling evidence, however, lies in a simple artistic detail: her scale. In countless reliefs, Nefertiti is depicted as the exact same height as Akhenaten. In Egyptian art, size equated to importance. A queen was always shown smaller than the king, just as nobles were shown smaller than the queen. By making Nefertiti his equal in stature, the art was broadcasting a political reality. She was his co-ruler, his equal partner in governing their revolutionary new world. This was a level of shared power unseen in all of Egypt's long history. How could a woman ascend to such a position? It suggests a deep, personal trust from Akhenaten, but also a formidable political mind within Nefertiti. She was not merely a favored wife, she was an essential part of the monarchy's structure, a pillar without which the entire Atenist experiment might have collapsed. This makes her subsequent disappearance from the record not just mysterious, but deeply ominous. Then, the official records introduce a new and mysterious figure. In the later years of Akhenaten's reign, another royal name begins to appear alongside his. This co-ruler was not a son or a brother. The throne name was Ankh-Kheperir, and this person also used the epithet Neferneferuaten. The name Neferneferuaten is the critical clue. It is a beautiful and complex name, meaning the beautiful one is perfect for the Aten, and it is a name we have heard before. In her full, glorious title, Nefertiti was known as Neferneferuaten Nefertiti. This new ruler was using the core of the queen's own name. This is not a coincidence in the tightly controlled world of royal titles. The emergence of Ankh-Kheperir Neferneferuaten is one of the most tantalizing puzzles in all of Egyptian history. Could this new pharaoh actually be Queen Nefertiti herself, having shed her old name and taken on a new, kingly identity? The evidence is powerfully suggestive. We know that when a pharaoh came to the throne, they adopted a full set of 5 royal names. For a woman to become a king, she would need to do the same. The name Ankh-Kheperir fits perfectly into the established pattern of throne names, and the continued use of Neferneferuaten acts like a fingerprint, linking this new monarch directly back to the queen we know vanished. Some inscriptions even refer to this ruler with feminine endings, a grammatical slip that strongly implies the person behind the royal titles was a woman. Imagine the political genius of such a move. Akhenaten's revolution was likely faltering. Foreign threats were mounting, and domestic unrest was growing. By elevating his most trusted and powerful ally to the status of full co-pharaoh, he could solidify their rule. It would have been a masterstroke, ensuring the continuity of their religious vision with a leader whose authority was absolute and unquestionable. Yet, not all scholars are convinced. A minority argue this mysterious co-ruler could have been one of Akhenaten's daughters, or perhaps another royal relative, stepping into the power vacuum. The debate continues to this day, fueled by fragments of inscriptions and damaged artifacts, but the simplest explanation often holds the most weight. The queen, known for her unparalleled power, simply transitioned into a new, even greater role. She did not disappear. She transformed. She went from being the king's great wife to being a king in her own right. This theory solves the mystery of her vanishing, not with a tragedy, but with a promotion. If Nefertiti became King Nefertiti, then her story does not end in silence. It enters its most dramatic and powerful chapter, a chapter written not as a queen, but as a pharaoh. The last time we see Queen Nefertiti with absolute certainty is on a limestone carving from the city of Akhenaten. The scene is a celebration, marking the 12th year of Akhenaten's rule. It is a vibrant depiction of the royal family in their full glory, receiving tribute from foreign lands in the dazzling light of the Aten. Nefertiti stands with her husband and their 6 daughters, her elegant profile and iconic crown unmistakable. She is the great royal wife, the powerful partner, central to the ceremony. Then, this vivid image is followed by nothing but silence. She vanishes from all official monuments, from the carvings on temple walls, and from the administrative records that detailed the lives of the royals. It is not a gradual fading. It is a sudden, clean break, as if a door slammed shut on her story. One moment she is there, the next, she is simply gone. The abruptness is staggering. For a woman whose face was once as ubiquitous as the pharaoh's own, this complete erasure is deeply unsettling. Where did she go? What could possibly explain the disappearance of a co-ruler so vital to the state's very identity? The silence that follows her last definitive appearance is a gaping hole in history, a mystery that begins with this single, final, unambiguous trace. This profound silence leads us directly to our first and most straightforward theory, the possibility of an untimely but natural death. In the ancient world, even for royalty, life was fragile. A plague could have swept through the sun-baked city of Akhenaten, a swift and merciless epidemic that did not distinguish between commoner and queen. With 6 known daughters, Nefertiti was almost certainly of childbearing age, and complications during childbirth were a tragically common end for women of her time. If she succumbed to an illness or a failed delivery, her sudden disappearance from the records would make a sad, simple kind of sense. The court artists would have simply stopped carving her image because she was no longer there to be celebrated. This is the most human explanation, one that requires no conspiracies or political machinations, only the acknowledgement of ancient mortality. Yet, for many Egyptologists, this theory feels deeply unsatisfying. The problem is not that she died, but that she seems to have died without a trace. Where was she buried? A queen of her immense stature, a woman who may have ruled as a pharaoh, would have been laid to rest in a tomb of breathtaking splendor. Her burial would have been a state event, accompanied by rituals and funerary goods meant to ensure her journey to the afterlife. So where is it? The royal tomb at Amarna, the city Akhenaten, was prepared for Akhenaten, and while it contains fragments that suggest other royal burials, none have been conclusively identified as Nefertiti's. No grand sarcophagus, no canopic jars bearing her name, no definitive mummy has ever been found. For a figure so central to her era, this lack of a physical resting place is a glaring absence. It is as if the earth simply swallowed her whole. If she died a natural death, why was her tomb not completed, or if it was, why was it so thoroughly lost or reused that we cannot find a single piece of her? The silence around her end feels less like a quiet passing and more like an active erasure, a mystery that a simple explanation of plague or childbirth fails to resolve. But the silence surrounding her end feels deliberate, almost violent, which leads us to a far darker possibility. What if Nefertiti did not die of natural causes, but suffered a devastating political fall from grace? In the volatile world of a religious revolution, yesterday's prophet can become today's heretic. Could the queen have lost the favor of her husband, the pharaoh, or incurred the wrath of the old priesthood she helped topple? The reasons for such a downfall could be numerous. Perhaps she advocated for pushing their religious reforms even further, creating a rift with a more cautious Akhenaten. Or maybe, in a shocking reversal, she sought a reconciliation with the old gods of Egypt, betraying the very Atenist faith she helped build. A power struggle at the heart of the royal court is equally plausible. With her immense authority, she may have been seen as a threat, a rival center of power that the pharaoh or his advisors could no longer tolerate. The evidence for this theory lies in the stones themselves. In ancient Egypt, the ultimate punishment for a traitor or a disgraced official was damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. This was not merely forgetting someone. It was a systematic, ritualized erasure. Craftsmen were sent out with chisels to hack the person's name and image from every monument, every statue, every temple wall. They attempted to annihilate the person's soul for eternity, preventing them from existing in the afterlife. So, is there any evidence that this happened to Nefertiti? The answer is both yes and no, and that is what makes the puzzle so complex. In many places, her beautiful, distinctive face remains perfectly intact. Yet, in other crucial locations, her names and images have been meticulously chiseled away. Most tellingly, these attacks often focus on the parts of her titles that linked her directly to power, like the references to her as the mistress of Upper and Lower Egypt. This selective destruction suggests a targeted campaign, not random vandalism. It implies that someone, with official authority, wanted to remove not Nefertiti the woman, but Nefertiti the political entity. Who had the power to order such a thing? Only someone with authority equal to or greater than her own. The question then becomes, did Akhenaten himself order the erasure of his beloved partner? Or did her enemies finally succeed in toppling her after his death? A political fall would explain the sudden silence perfectly. One day she was a goddess on earth, the next she was a non-person, her legacy scraped from the stone records of the kingdom she helped rule. This theory offers the most elegant solution to the entire mystery. Nefertiti did not vanish into obscurity or fall from grace. Instead, she underwent a profound transformation, shedding her identity as the great royal wife to become a full pharaoh, a king in her own right. The evidence for this is etched into the very names that appear in the historical record after she disappears. We encounter a new ruler using the throne name Ankh-Kheperir, a powerful, traditional pharaonic title. But the personal name this individual uses is the crucial clue, Neferneferuaten. This is not a random name. It is the core of Nefertiti's own most formal and beautiful title, Neferneferuaten Nefertiti. For another person to simply adopt the heart of her unique name is almost unthinkable. It would be like a new president suddenly deciding to call themselves Kennedy or Roosevelt. In the tightly controlled world of royal branding, this name acts as a direct fingerprint, linking the new king back to the queen who was just there. The logic is compelling. As Akhenaten's health may have failed, or as political pressures mounted from foreign empires and internal dissent, he needed to secure his legacy. What better way than to elevate his most trusted, powerful, and ideologically committed partner to the highest office? By making her his official co-regent, a fellow pharaoh, he ensured their radical vision for Egypt would continue under a leader who was already revered and feared. This was not a disappearance, it was a promotion of the highest order. She exchanged the iconic crown of the great royal wife for the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt. In doing so, the queen known as Nefertiti was effectively erased, not by enemies, but by her own ascent to ultimate power. The woman was gone, replaced by the king. This explains why her image as queen vanishes so abruptly. The artists were no longer commissioned to depict the great royal wife because that person no longer existed in that role. Their chisels and brushes were now busy creating images of the new pharaoh, Ankh-Kheperir Neferneferuaten. The silence surrounding Queen Nefertiti is not a mystery of death or disgrace, but the quiet that follows a metamorphosis. She became something greater, and in that becoming, her old self was deliberately retired from the official story. This theory turns the entire puzzle on its head. We have not been searching for a missing queen, but for a king we already knew. Just as we begin to accept that Nefertiti transformed into the pharaoh Neferneferuaten, the sands of Egypt reveal another ghost. A second mysterious ruler appears in the crumbling records, a pharaoh named Smenkhkare. His name means vigorous is the soul of Ra, a significant detail because it pointedly abandons the name of the Aten, the sun disk. This is a clear and dramatic shift, a move back toward the old gods that Nefertiti and Akhenaten had worked so hard to erase. The historical record for Smenkhkare is even more fragmentary than for Neferneferuaten. He seems to have reigned for perhaps only a year or two, a fleeting shadow in the grand timeline of the pharaohs. His sudden appearance creates a massive historical problem. Was Smenkhkare a completely separate person, a young man who briefly took the throne? Or was this name merely another mask, a final new identity for the ever-transforming Nefertiti? Some Egyptologists propose a compelling sequence of events. They argue that Nefertiti first ruled as Ankheparir Neferneferuetin, continuing her husband's religious revolution. Then, as political pressures mounted, she made a strategic compromise. To appease the powerful priests of the old religion, she changed her name to Smenkhkare, publicly embracing the god Ra to secure her grip on power. This would mean one remarkable woman occupied the throne under two different kingly identities. The evidence linking Smenkhkare to Nefertiti, while thin, is provocative. A small, exquisite ring found in the ancient city of Thebes bears both of their cartouches side by side. This is highly unusual. You would not typically find the name of a queen paired so intimately with a ruling pharaoh unless they were closely linked, perhaps even the same person. More tantalizing still is the famous, unfinished depiction of Smenkhkare and his great royal wife, Meritaten, who was actually the eldest daughter of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. The artistic style of the carving, the slender elongated forms, are pure Amarna art, the style created for Nefertiti's family. If Smenkhkare was a separate young man, why was he depicted in the very specific, soon-to-be-abandoned artistic style of Nefertiti's court? The alternative theory is that Smenkhkare was a separate individual, possibly a younger brother of Akhenaten, or even the famous boy King Tutankhamun himself, taking a brief early name before settling on the one we know today. Yet this raises more questions than it answers. If Smenkhkare was a distinct person, where did he come from so suddenly, and where did he go so quickly? His mummy has never been conclusively identified. The Smenkhkare enigma forces us to confront the sheer chaos of this period. The throne of Egypt was like a game of musical chairs played in a collapsing building. One name appears, then vanishes, only to be replaced by another. Was Nefertiti the player behind one, or even two, of these names? Her ultimate fate is hidden within this dizzying shell game of royal identities, a final, brilliant disguise. While the royal court in Akhenaten was reshaping Egypt's soul, the rest of the ancient world was watching with keen interest. A remarkable window into this international drama survives in the form of the Amarna letters, a priceless cache of clay tablets discovered in the ruins of the city. These were not internal memos or royal decrees. They were the diplomatic cables of the Bronze Age, a sprawling archive of correspondence between the Egyptian court and the kings of Babylon, Assyria, Mitanni, and the petty rulers of city-states in Canaan. The letters are filled with flattery, complaints about insufficient gold shipments, and desperate pleas for military aid. They paint a picture of a superpower whose influence was wavering, and they hold a critical, often overlooked clue in the search for Nefertiti. We must look carefully at how these foreign dignitaries addressed the Egyptian court. In the early years of Akhenaten's reign, several letters are addressed not just to the pharaoh, but explicitly to the king and his queen. One remarkable message from the king of Mitanni is sent to Napkururia, the Babylonian rendering of Neferkheparir, which was Akhenaten's throne name, and he also specifically names his correspondent as Tajuhepa. Most scholars believe Tajuhepa was a Mitanni princess who came to Egypt, but some argue this could be a foreign rendering of Nefertiti's own name. The crucial point is that the queen is acknowledged as a figure of international stature, a person worthy of direct diplomatic address. Foreign kings saw her as a power center in her own right, someone whose influence could be courted. Then, the tone of the correspondence shifts. The later letters, those believed to come from the final years at Amarna, change their form of address. The frantic messages from vassal kings in Canaan are now directed solely to the king. The specific, named presence of the great royal wife vanishes from the international record. This is not conclusive proof of her death, but it is a significant diplomatic signal. In the intricate protocol of ancient statecraft, you would not stop writing to a powerful queen unless she was no longer in a position to wield that power. Her sudden erasure from this international dialogue mirrors her disappearance from the monuments at home. The silence is echoed across the deserts and mountains by Egypt's allies and enemies alike. They stopped talking to her because, for all practical political purposes, she was no longer there. This external evidence from the Amarna letters adds a chilling layer of confirmation. The world outside Egypt's borders perceived her vanishing act at the exact same moment her own people did. The revolutionary Sun City of Akhenaten did not long survive its founders. With the death of Akhenaten, the entire Amarna experiment began to crumble under its own weight. The traditional priesthood of Amun, whose power and wealth had been stripped away, saw their chance to reclaim Egypt for the old gods. The pharaohs who followed, first the boy king Tutankhamun and then his successors Ai and Hormheb, faced an impossible task. They had to pick up the pieces of a fractured kingdom, one teetering on the brink of economic collapse and military weakness. Their solution was drastic and absolute. They would pretend the Amarna period never happened. This was not a quiet forgetting. It was a state-sponsored campaign of annihilation. The city of Akhenaten was abandoned, its beautiful palaces and open-air temples left to the desert winds. The court packed up and moved back to the traditional capitals of Memphis and Thebes, symbolically turning their backs on the sun disk. But the physical destruction was even more telling. Work crews, under direct royal orders, were sent out with chisels and hammers. Their mission was to methodically destroy the legacy of the heretic king and everyone associated with him. They attacked the monuments, hacking away the names and images of Akhenaten, his god the Aten, and his entire family. This was damnatio memoriae on a national scale, an attempt to surgically remove 17 years from the history of Egypt. For us, searching for Nefertiti, this official vandalism is a catastrophe. Every image of her that was defaced, every cartouche of her name that was scraped from a temple wall, represents another piece of her story deliberately smashed to pieces. The records that could have told us if she ruled as pharaoh, how she died, or where she was buried, were likely pulverized or burned. The erasure was so thorough that her name would be lost for over 3,000 years. The man who oversaw the final, most vicious phase of this historical cleansing was the pharaoh Hormheb. He was a military man, not of royal blood, who seized the throne. To legitimize his own rule, he presented himself as the savior who restored Ma'at, the cosmic order, after the chaos of Amarna. He went so far as to backdate his reign to the death of Amenhotep III, effectively wiping Akhenaten, Neferneferuaten, Smenkhkare, and even Tutankhamun from the official king lists. In Hormheb's official history, he was the direct and rightful successor to the traditional pharaohs. Imagine the zeal with which his agents sought out every last trace of the Atenist royals. If Nefertiti's tomb was ever marked, it would have been a prime target for desecration. Her mummy, her funerary goods, any papyrus scrolls telling her story, all would have been systematically obliterated to ensure her soul could never find peace. This is the ultimate irony of her disappearance. The very act of trying to erase her from existence proves just how powerful and threatening her memory truly was. The silence that surrounds her is not a quiet absence. It is the loud, echoing silence left by a sledgehammer. Deep within a side chamber of tomb KV-35, archaeologists uncovered a mummified woman with a horrifying secret. She is known only as the Younger Lady, and her face bears the brutal marks of a violent end. The left side of her cheek and mouth were smashed inward by a terrible, focused blow. This was not the careful work of tomb robbers. This was a targeted, vicious attack, delivered with enough force to shatter bone even through the mummification wrappings. The injury is so severe that some experts believe it was the actual cause of death, a fatal wound inflicted upon a royal woman. So who was this victim, and why was she struck down with such fury? The forensic evidence immediately sparked a breathtaking theory. Could this be the murdered body of Queen Nefertiti? The mummy herself offers other clues. Her age at death is estimated to be between 25 and 35 years old, a perfect match for Nefertiti, who would have been in her prime during the turbulent final years at Amarna. Her left arm was positioned across her chest in what is known as the royal pose, a burial tradition often reserved for pharaohs and queens. This was no ordinary noblewoman. This was someone of immense importance, someone who suffered a catastrophic, personal violence. The most compelling evidence, however, came from modern science. A decade ago, genetic testing was performed on the Younger Lady. The results sent shockwaves through the Egyptology community. The tests revealed that this mummy was the mother of the famous boy, King Tutankhamun. We know that Tutankhamun was the son of Akhenaten. If the younger lady is his mother, then she must have been one of Akhenaten's wives. The list of his known great royal wives is incredibly short, and the most prominent, the most powerful, was Nefertiti. The genetic link seems to close the case, presenting us with a heartbreaking image of the iconic queen, not vanished, but brutally slain. Yet, science often creates as many mysteries as it solves. If this is Nefertiti, why was her mummy unceremoniously hidden in a side chamber, far from a grand tomb of her own? Who would dare to kill a queen, and with such personal hatred? The violent wound to her face feels like more than an assassination. It feels like a message, a final, furious act of erasure aimed directly at the woman who helped reshape a kingdom. The genetic analysis seemed to offer a final, scientific answer. Researchers extracted ancient DNA from the younger lady and compared it to the well-established genetic profile of King Tutankhamun. The results were stunningly clear. The tests confirmed that this mummified woman was, without a doubt, Tutankhamun's biological mother, since we know from other genetic studies that Tut's father was the mummy known as KV-55, widely accepted to be Akhenaten. The logical conclusion felt inevitable. The mother of Tutankhamun had to be one of Akhenaten's primary wives, and the most famous, the most powerful of those wives was Nefertiti. For a moment, the mystery appeared solved. The iconic queen had not vanished into thin air. She was right here, her body preserved, her violent death a silent testament to the brutal end of the Amarna era. The genetic link seemed to transform a compelling theory into a scientific fact, finally giving a name and a face to the nameless younger lady. Yet, the world of ancient DNA is rarely so simple, and this discovery sparked a firestorm of debate that continues to this day. The first major criticism lies in the sample itself. The genetic material was taken from bone, a substance that is incredibly porous and susceptible to contamination over centuries. Critics argue that handling by archaeologists, exposure to the elements, and even the breath of modern visitors to the tomb could have introduced foreign DNA, potentially corrupting the original sample. Can we be absolutely certain that the genetic profile they sequenced belonged entirely to the ancient queen, and not to a tiny fragment of a modern genetic code, accidentally mixed in during excavation or analysis? A second, even more profound objection challenges the fundamental family tree. Some leading Egyptologists point to a different interpretation of the same genetic data. They propose that Akhenaten might have had another, lesser-known wife, perhaps even his own sister. In the royal families of ancient Egypt, pharaohs often had multiple wives and children to secure the bloodline. It was a common, though risky, practice. This theory suggests the younger lady could be a full sister of Akhenaten, making her King Tut's aunt, not his mother. The genetic signature would look very similar, as a sister and a daughter would share a significant amount of DNA with the same male lineage. This alternate explanation cannot be dismissed. It forces us to ask a difficult question. Are we seeing what we want to see in the data? Connecting the most famous name to the most dramatic find because it creates the most satisfying story. The controversy highlights the delicate dance between hard science and historical interpretation. A DNA test can reveal a biological relationship, but it cannot on its own tell us a person's name, their title, or the life they lived. The genetic link between the younger lady and Tutankhamun is a powerful clue, a piece of the puzzle that fits perfectly in one picture, but can also be nudged to fit an entirely different one. So we are left standing over this mummy, this woman who died so violently, with a scientific report in one hand and a 3,000-year-old mystery in the other. We know she was royal, we know she was young, we know she was Tutankhamun's mother, but the final, crucial step of naming her as Nefertiti remains a leap of faith, a decision based as much on historical context and probability as on the unblinking data of the double helix. That single genetic test, presented as a definitive answer, instead tore open a new battlefield of academic debate. The scientific certainty promised by DNA began to crack under the weight of immense historical and technical challenges. Critics point first to the ghost in the machine, contamination. The tombs of the Valley of the Kings are not sterile laboratories. For over a century, These mummies have been handled by archaeologists, exposed to dust, moisture, and the very breath of countless visitors. Ancient bone is porous, acting like a sponge that can absorb minuscule fragments of modern DNA from a careless touch or a stray skin cell floating in the air. Isolating the original 3,000-year-old genetic code from this modern noise is a monumental task. Skeptics argue that even the most careful procedures cannot guarantee purity, raising the haunting possibility that the celebrated result is a genetic chimera, a mix of ancient queen and modern scientist. Beyond the fear of contamination lies the complex puzzle of the royal family tree itself. The argument that the younger lady must be Nefertiti rests on a single, critical assumption, that Akhenaten had no other wives who could have been Tutankhamun's mother. But the rigid customs of Egyptian royalty make this assumption fragile. Pharaohs routinely took multiple wives to secure the succession. It was a common, if genetically risky, strategy. A compelling alternative theory suggests the younger lady was not Nefertiti at all, but a lesser-known wife of Akhenaten, perhaps even one of his own sisters. This would mean the mummy is King Tut's aunt, not his mother. The genetic data, when viewed through this lens, can be reinterpreted to support this different family structure. A sister of Akhenaten would share a significant amount of DNA with him, creating a genetic signature that could be misread as a parent-child link without other contextual evidence. This is not a minor technicality. It forces us to confront a fundamental question. Are we connecting the most famous name to the most dramatic evidence because it creates the most compelling narrative, rather than the most historically accurate one? The controversy reveals the limits of science in solving a historical mystery. DNA can reveal biological relationships, but it cannot on its own assign a name, a title, or a life story. That final, crucial step from a genetic profile to the iconic Queen Nefertiti remains a leap of faith across a chasm of lost time. For generations, the logical place to look for Nefertiti was right where her world ended. The royal tomb at Amarna, carved deep into a secluded eastern valley, was meant to be the eternal resting place for the heretic king and his family. Early excavators who entered that dark, desolate space found a scene of utter devastation. The tomb had been systematically looted and vandalized in antiquity, its grand sarcophagus smashed to pieces, and the wall decorations meticulously defaced. A few fragments of a royal burial remained, including the shattered remains of a gorgeous coffin decorated with golden rosettes, believed by some to have been made for a royal woman. But of Nefertiti herself, there was no definitive trace. No inscription bore her name, no chamber was clearly marked as hers. The silence in that tomb was deafening. It forced archaeologists to confront a painful truth. If she was ever buried here, her enemies had done their work too well, erasing her presence so completely that we may never find her in the sands of her own city. This monumental absence only fueled a more audacious question. What if she was never meant to be found at Amarna at all? What if her final secret lies hidden somewhere else entirely, in a place so obvious we have been walking past it for centuries? This theory took a breathtaking turn in the modern era, moving the search from the desolate ruins of Amarna to the most famous tomb in the world. In 2015, a British Egyptologist named Nicholas Reeves made a radical proposal after studying high-resolution scans of Tutankhamun's burial chamber. He noticed something everyone else had missed: faint, straight lines beneath the famous painted scenes. To his trained eye, these were not cracks or natural flaws in the rock. They were the distinct outlines of sealed doorways, carefully plastered and painted over to look like part of the wall. His analysis suggested that behind the north and west walls of King Tut's tomb lay two previously unknown passages. The implications were staggering. Tutankhamun's tomb, known as KV62, has always been an archaeological curiosity. It is famously small and seems hastily assembled for a pharaoh, even a young one. The layout is more reminiscent of a tomb designed for a queen. Reeves put forth a revolutionary idea. What if this was not originally Tutankhamun's tomb at all? What if the boy king was buried in what was merely the antechamber, the outer section, of a much larger, grander tomb belonging to someone else? And who would merit a burial of such immense scale that a pharaoh could be tucked into its entrance? The most compelling candidate, according to Reeves, was Nefertiti. His hypothesis suggests that KV-62 was never intended for Tut. It was the beginning of the tomb of Ankh-Kheperir Neferneferuaten, the kingly identity of Nefertiti herself. When Tutankhamun died unexpectedly young, the powerful courtiers faced a crisis. They had no time to carve and decorate a proper tomb for him from scratch. So they made a practical, if sacrilegious, decision. They took the outermost chamber of Nefertiti's still sealed, grand tomb, walled off the entrance to her inner sanctums to protect her eternal rest, and buried the boy king in the space that was left. This would explain the tomb's strange proportions and its crowded, almost jumbled feel. The real treasure, the undisturbed burial of the heretic queen-turned-pharaoh, would be waiting just a few feet away, hidden behind a wall of painted plaster for over 3,000 years. The world held its breath. Could the greatest archaeological discovery of the century be lurking behind the most studied walls in history? The possibility sent a jolt of electricity through the world of archaeology. Reeves' theory was not left as mere speculation. It demanded to be tested, and modern technology offered the perfect tool: ground-penetrating radar. A team was brought into the cramped, humid confines of Tutankhamun's tomb, their sophisticated equipment humming as it scanned the painted walls. The goal was simple yet profound: to peer through the stone without touching it, to see if the ghostly doorways Reeves had identified were real. The initial results, announced in early 2016, seemed to confirm the dream. The team's radar expert reported with high confidence that he could see clear signatures of empty space behind the north wall, along with what appeared to be metallic and organic objects within that void. The announcement exploded across global news. It felt like history itself was holding its breath, waiting for a queen to emerge from her hidden chamber. But the elation was short-lived. Science, especially when interpreting the echoes of radar waves through 3,000-year-old rock, is rarely so straightforward. A second, more extensive radar survey was commissioned later that same year, this time by a different scientific team hoping to settle the matter. Their results were a bucket of cold water. After weeks of meticulous scanning and data analysis, this new team concluded there was no evidence whatsoever of hidden chambers or doorways. They argued that the initial promising signals were likely echoes from natural variations in the limestone bedrock, not from man-made voids. The scientific community was now divided, with one set of data promising a revolutionary discovery and another, seemingly more rigorous set, dismissing it as a geological mirage. The conflicting reports placed the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities in an impossible position. The potential reward was the discovery of the century, but the risk was catastrophic. To prove the theory definitively would require invasive action, drilling small boreholes through the irreplaceable, painted plaster of the burial chamber. What if they damaged a masterpiece of ancient art only to find solid rock on the other side? The skepticism from the highest levels of Egyptian archaeology grew. Many senior experts had never believed the theory, arguing that the tomb's layout, while unusual, was consistent with other rushed royal burials from the period. They saw the tantalizing radar scans as wishful thinking amplified by technology we do not fully understand in such a unique environment. The ministry ultimately decided that the evidence was not compelling enough to justify the risk. The permit for invasive drilling was denied. The painted walls of King Tut's tomb would remain intact, keeping their secrets locked safely behind a veil of pigment and plaster. This decision left the world with a profound and tantalizing uncertainty. We are left standing in that chamber, staring at the beautiful scenes of the boy king's journey to the afterlife, forever wondering if the gaze of the legendary Nefertiti is staring back at us from just inches away. So if the younger lady is not Nefertiti, we must confront a difficult but essential question. Who else could she be? The genetic evidence confirms she is the mother of Tutankhamun and a sister to the mummy known as KV-55, Akhenaten. This creates a very specific family puzzle. The most prominent candidate aside from Nefertiti is a mysterious woman named Kia. She appears in the Amarna records as a secondary wife of Akhenaten, one who held the unique title of the greatly beloved wife. Her name and image are found on precious cosmetic jars and carved onto temple walls, often meticulously recarved over later. suggesting she fell from favor or her legacy was reassigned. Kia is a ghost in the records, but she was clearly significant. Could she have been the mother of the royal heir? The evidence is thin but provocative. Some Egyptologists suggest that the famous golden coffin found in Tutankhamun's tomb, the one with the beautiful inlaid rosettes, was originally made for Kia, and then repurposed for the boy king. If true, this would link her directly to Tutankhamun's burial goods, yet a major problem remains. There is no evidence whatsoever that Kia was a sister to Akhenaten. The genetic data demands a sibling relationship, and Kia's origins are completely unknown, making it impossible to confirm or deny a blood tie. Another, more radical possibility is that the younger lady is not a wife at all, but a daughter. This theory proposes that Akhenaten fathered a child with one of his own daughters, a practice that, while risky, was not unheard of in the Egyptian royal family to keep the bloodline pure. Under this scenario, the younger lady would be both Tutankhamun's mother and his sister, and also the daughter of Akhenaten. This would perfectly explain the genetic data showing she was a sister to KV-55 and the mother of his child. It is a deeply unsettling idea to modern sensibilities, but it fits the convoluted and insular world of the Amarna royal family. Each candidate presents a different story. Kia offers a tale of a beloved but lesser wife whose son became pharaoh. The daughter theory paints a darker picture of royal tradition and genetic consequence. And Nefertiti remains the most famous and compelling figure, the one whose story we desperately want to complete. The identity of this mummified woman shifts with every new interpretation. Her silent skull, a blank canvas onto which we project our theories about love, power, and family in a lost world. Her story is a haunting question mark in history, yet her face remains one of the most recognizable in the world. This cultural immortality is largely thanks to a single, breathtaking object discovered on a December day in 1912. German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt was excavating the ancient workshop of the sculptor Thutmose at Amarna when his team unearthed a limestone bust. Its colors so vibrant it seemed to have been painted yesterday. The artifact was the now iconic bust of Nefertiti, a masterpiece of ancient art that instantly captured the world's imagination. Borchardt himself was stunned, writing in his diary that it was impossible to describe, that you had to see it for yourself. The bust was not just a portrait, it was a presence. It captured her elegant, elongated neck, her sharply defined cheekbones, and that enigmatic, confident smile that has fascinated millions. This single discovery pulled the Queen from the dusty pages of history and placed her squarely into the modern world's consciousness, transforming her from a historical pharaoh into a timeless icon of beauty and power. That serene, painted face would soon travel far beyond the desert sands. After its controversial arrival in Berlin, the bust became a star of the museum world, drawing crowds who were mesmerized by its lifelike perfection. But its influence did not stop there. Artists of the early 20th century, who were themselves breaking from traditional forms, saw in Nefertiti a kindred spirit from the ancient past. Her stylized, graceful features resonated with the bold lines of the Art Deco movement. You can see echoes of her elegant silhouette in the art and architecture of the 1920s and 30s, a period that celebrated a new, modern aesthetic. Fashion designers have repeatedly drawn inspiration from her iconic headdress and dramatic eye makeup, while her strong, graceful profile has become a universal shorthand for regal elegance. She is more than a historical figure. She is a muse, her image constantly reinterpreted across paintings, sculptures, and digital art, proving that her aesthetic appeal is truly timeless. Beyond her beauty, however, lies a deeper power that resonates in our modern era. Nefertiti has become a potent symbol for female authority and autonomy. In a world that is still grappling with gender equality, her story offers a powerful narrative of a woman who co-ruled an empire, challenged a powerful religious establishment, and may have ultimately commanded the throne as a king in her own right. She is not remembered as a passive consort, but as an active and essential participant in one of history's most radical revolutions. This image of a powerful, strategic woman standing equal to her husband makes her a compelling figure for contemporary discussions about female leadership. She represents an ancient proof that women have always been capable of wielding ultimate power, a fact that was systematically erased but never truly forgotten. Her legacy is a reminder that the stories we tell about the past shape our vision for the future. Why does her story captivate us so deeply? Perhaps it is because she embodies the ultimate paradox, a woman who was almost erased from history, yet whose face and story have become more powerful with each passing century. Her mystery is not just about where she went, but about what she represents, a lost vision of female power that we are still, to this day, striving to recover. This religious revolution was not merely a change of gods, it was a complete reordering of the universe. Akhenaten did not just promote the Aten above the other deities, he actively dismantled the entire ancient pantheon. The names of gods like Amun, Osiris, and Isis were chiseled from monuments, their temples were closed, and their vast priesthoods were stripped of power and wealth. In their place, he elevated a single, abstract power, the Aten, represented simply as a sun disk whose rays ended in gentle hands offering the Ankh, the symbol of life, to the royal family. This was a stark, uncompromising monotheism, or perhaps a henotheism where one god is supreme above all others. The Aten was not a god you could pray to in a dark, hidden shrine. It was a visible, physical force that bathed the world in light, and only the royal family could serve as its sole intermediaries. Every prayer from a common Egyptian had to be directed through Akhenaten and Nefertiti. They became the living bridge between heaven and earth, the essential conduits for divine favor. In this radical new theology, Nefertiti was not just a supporter. She was a fundamental pillar of the entire belief system. Her official titles were not just political, they were deeply theological. She was called the Mistress of Happiness, a title that resonates with joy and celebration, perfectly suited to a religion that worshipped the life-giving sun. She was also the Sweet of Love and the Lady of Grace, titles that framed her as the embodiment of the Aten's benevolent and joyful essence. While Akhenaten was often depicted as the stern, doctrinal force of the new faith, Nefertiti was its human heart, its attractive and joyful face. Art from the period consistently shows her actively participating in rituals, making offerings directly to the sun disk, and basking in its rays alongside her husband. She was not a silent observer, she was a high priestess, a living goddess, and a core component of the Aten's manifestation on Earth. This is why her fate is so deeply entangled with the fate of the religion itself. Her power, her public image, her very reason for being, were all constructed around this revolutionary cult. If the worship of the Aten succeeded and became the permanent religion of Egypt, her position would be unshakable, her divinity eternal. But if this radical experiment failed, if the old gods ever returned, then Nefertiti would not merely fall from power. She would become a symbol of a hated heresy, a figure whose very existence was a blasphemy that needed to be erased. Her story is the story of the Amarna revolution, a dazzling, fragile dream of a new world that rested entirely on the shoulders of one royal couple. The boy king Tutankhamun inherited a kingdom on the verge of collapse. By the time he took the throne, likely around the age of 8 or 9, the grand experiment of Amarna was already gasping for air. The old priesthoods were seething, the empire's borders were insecure, and the economy was strained. Tutankhamun's reign would become a frantic, and ultimately successful, attempt to put the genie of revolution back in the bottle. His very name tells the story. He was born Tutankhaten, living image of the Aten, a name celebrating his parents' sun god. But early in his reign, he changed it. He became Tutankhamun, living image of Amun, a public and profound declaration that the old gods were back. This was more than a symbolic gesture. It was the central policy of his rule, a policy almost certainly orchestrated by the powerful men who guided the child king's hand. His court was dominated by two formidable figures, the Vizier I, an elder statesman from his father's court, and the General Hormheb, the commander of the armies. These men understood that the only path to stability, and to their own power, was a full and utter repudiation of the Amarna heresy. A famous stone slab, known as the Restoration Stela, was erected to announce this great reversal. It describes a land in chaos, with temples fallen into ruin and the gods having turned their backs on Egypt. Tutankhamun, it claims, was the divine savior who restored the sacred shrines, refilled the temple treasuries, and re-established the priesthoods. It is a masterpiece of political propaganda, painting the young pharaoh as the restorer of cosmic order after a period of dreadful darkness. And in this official narrative, the architects of that darkness, his own parents Akhenaten and Nefertiti, are never mentioned. They are the unpeople, the ghosts at the feast whose very memory is a poison to the new regime. Imagine the psychological weight on the young king, raised to believe his family was divine, now being told to publicly denounce their life's work and erase them from history. Every ritual he performed in the Temple of Ammon was a silent betrayal of his father's beliefs. Every inscription that praised the old gods was a chisel blow to his mother's legacy. His entire reign was an act of sanctioned forgetting, a national project to build a new future by burying the immediate past. Tutankhamun's own untimely death sealed this fate. He was buried not in the royal tomb at Amarna, but in the Valley of the Kings, surrounded by the iconography of the traditional gods his parents had tried to destroy. The restoration was complete. In saving the kingdom, the boy king had to become the agent of his own family's eternal silence. The very tools that failed to provide a definitive answer in King Tut's tomb are now evolving at a breathtaking pace. While the debate over hidden chambers currently rests, it is far from over. Future archaeologists will not be limited to the radar technology of 2016. They will have access to a new generation of sensing equipment with exponentially greater resolution and depth penetration. Imagine ground-penetrating radar so sophisticated it can distinguish between a natural fissure and a man-cut doorway with near certainty, or even map the outlines of objects hidden within a sealed room. Another promising technology, muon tomography, uses cosmic rays from deep space to create three-dimensional images of dense structures, much like a super-powered X-ray for pyramids and mountains. This technique has already been used to peer into the Great Pyramid, revealing previously unknown voids. Applying muon tomography to the hills of the Valley of the Kings could potentially map entire networks of undiscovered tombs without ever lifting a trowel. The stone itself may soon become transparent to our gaze, revealing every secret corridor and burial chamber hidden for millennia. The search is not ending. It is entering a new and more powerful phase, one driven by silicon and physics rather than just speculation. And the ultimate prize, the undisturbed tomb of a heretic queen, remains the most compelling target of all. Beyond the walls of known tombs, the science of genetics offers another path to the truth. The controversy over the younger lady's identity hinges on the limitations of our current DNA analysis. As techniques for extracting and sequencing ancient, degraded genetic material improve, we may one day be able to read the entire genome of these mummies with flawless accuracy. This could finally settle the debate over her relationship to Akhenaten and Tutankhamun, confirming or denying if she is Nefertiti. More advanced analysis could even reveal physical traits encoded in her DNA, allowing us to compare the genetic blueprint of the mummy to the famous carved face of the queen. We might one day know, with scientific certainty, if the woman in the tomb is the same woman immortalized in limestone and paint. Each of these technological leaps keeps the hope alive. The mystery of Nefertiti's disappearance has endured for over 3,000 years. It may only be a matter of time before 21st century innovation finally solves a puzzle that has defied centuries of searching. Her story is not yet complete. The final chapter is still being written, not in hieroglyphs, but in data streams and genetic code, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Her story is a ghost haunting the long corridors of history, a beautiful enigma that refuses to be solved. We are drawn back to Nefertiti again, and again not just for the facts, but for what she represents. She is the ultimate paradox, a face known the world over yet a life erased from its own time. This powerful grip on our imagination comes from a collision of timeless themes. She embodies a lost ideal of beauty, frozen in that perfect limestone bust, a standard of elegance that feels both ancient and utterly modern, yet that beauty was coupled with a level of power rarely afforded to any woman in the ancient world. She was a queen who stood as an equal to a pharaoh, a partner in a revolution that sought to overturn 1,000 years of tradition. This combination is magnetic. the graceful and the formidable fused into one unforgettable image. Her narrative is also a profound lesson in the fragility of memory. Her disappearance shows us how easily a life, even one of immense stature, can be scratched from the record by those who came after. The systematic erasure of her name and image is a chilling reminder that history is not a fixed record, but a story often written by the victors. We are left sifting through the fragments they failed to destroy, piecing together a portrait from the negative space. This makes her more than just a missing queen. She becomes a symbol for all the voices silenced, the stories lost, the truths deliberately buried by time and tyranny. Her mystery taps into our deepest curiosity about the past, about power, and about the delicate threads that connect us to those who came before. We look at her face, and we see not just a ruler of Egypt, but a reflection of our own quest for identity and legacy. The silence she left behind is not an empty one. It is a silence that echoes with questions, demanding that we never stop looking for the answers. The evidence lays out a spectrum of possibilities for Nefertiti's fate, each with its own compelling logic. She may have succumbed to a quiet, natural death from plague or childbirth, a tragically common end that would explain her sudden absence from the record. Or she could have suffered a violent political downfall, murdered by rivals who then systematically chiseled her legacy from the stone. The most elegant theory suggests she never vanished at all, but brilliantly transformed, shedding her identity as queen to reign as the pharaoh Nefertiti, her old self erased by her own ascent to ultimate power. Yet without her tomb, her mummy, or a single definitive inscription that closes the case, every answer remains a shadow. The sand has not yet given up its final secret. So we are left to weigh the clues ourselves. Which story feels most true to you? Did the iconic queen meet a tragic end, or did she masterfully orchestrate her own reinvention? Share your verdict in the comments below, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest enigmas.